Well, basketball season tipped off with a win, and maybe maybe there's some hope. Maybe there's some hope this season, especially after a long football season. Well, let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Northwestern, your daily podcast on the Northwestern Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Northwestern. I'm your host, Carter Bird. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day. We really appreciate it. We're available wherever you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever. We're also on YouTube. Just search Locked On Northwestern and you can find us. Wherever you listen, make sure that you subscribe, turn on notifications, give some feedback, leave a comment. It always helps us make the show better. We love interacting with our listeners. Today's show is also brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, so let's talk about it. Northwestern men's basketball got their season off and running with an 85-54 victory over Chicago State. They improved to, I believe, 15-0 versus Chicago State and 14-1 in the last 15 season openers. I think they're now 9-1 under head coach Chris Collins in openers. Well, the story of the game to me is Northwestern's defense. It was awesome. I mean, you held Chicago State to 16 of 63 from the field, 25.4%. If you hold a team to that shooting, you're going to win a lot of games. Northwestern didn't shoot it, I guess. They didn't torch the net or shoot the lights out, but they were 24-56 for 42.9%. But they were money from deep, 10 of 21, 47.6% from three, while Chicago State was 9 of 34 for just 26.5% from deep. Northwestern also stepped up to the line and hit their free throws, which is always key, especially as the season gets rolling. They were 27 of 32 from the line, 84.4% to Chicago State's 13 for 18 for 72.2%. Northwestern won the battle for the glass by 12. They're plus 12 in the rebounding battle with you had 48 rebounds to Chicago State's 38. But they did lose the actual battle on the offensive glass, as Chicago State had 10 first-half offensive rebounds. Chris Collins talked about in his post-game press conference. That was something that they emphasized during halftime, and you only saw 4 in the second half after Chicago State kind of got after him a little bit. He said that his guys needed to get into the body of the Chicago State players rather than jumping for the ball, because when you jump for it and don't get into the body and really box out, that's when you give up those offensive boards. On the defensive glass, though, Northwestern grabbed 35 of them to Chicago State's 22 assists. Northwestern distributed the ball a lot better than their opponent in this one. 20 assists as a team to just 9 for Chicago State. Tally on 8 steals to Chicago State's 6. And as you go, I mean, Northwestern really won almost every statistical category. Chicago State did have more blocks, though, 5 blocks to Northwestern's 4. And Northwestern had more turnovers with 14, which we saw them not turn the ball over very many times in the exhibition. Well, they turned it over a little bit more in this one, but I think with the way that they were playing defense, Northwestern was, you will take that. Chicago State had 12 turnovers, and the fouls were very lopsided. A lot of them were called on Chicago State. 28 fouls to Northwestern's 18. And also, Chicago State had the only technical foul of the game. Northwestern, their largest lead of the game was 37, but I think it was a very strong opening performance. Get out on the right foot. Don't want to have a misstep. You look around the country, not a lot of really big games. Maybe the biggest game of Monday night was Vanderbilt Memphis, which isn't saying a lot on the men's side. But Memphis got that win. But there were a few teams like FSU and Oklahoma and USC that dropped games to these schools that you should be able to almost roll the ball out there and win. And honestly, win off your brand as a Power 5 school. Well, Northwestern was able to handle their business. I think that is key. I mean, Chris Collins said that this was a very athletic, very strong Chicago State team, and Northwestern acquitted itself well, especially with that great defense and their ability to distribute the basketball. And yeah, I mean, you have your senior leadership on this team. We'll talk more about individuals here in a little bit, but really, Chris Collins was impressed with the rim protection and the physicality of his team. You had some shuffling around. You have Pete and Ryan are no longer on the team. They've transferred to UNC and Duke respectively. And he brought in some new guys. You got Titus Verhoeven. And then you've had Matt Nicholson in there. And you mean fresh faces, and he was impressed with how his guys kind of responded down low and were able to protect the rim. You also have Luke Hunger down there, a young guy, and those are going to be guys that need to be relied on. And he was he was very happy with, I guess, how his team played down low, especially after they figured out. They made sure that they started boxing out the opponent and rebounding. It was really kind of helped turn the game in their favor. And that's how it kind of shook out from a team perspective. In a second here, we're going to start to look at maybe some of the key players and what a couple of the Northwestern players had to say about this game. But first, let's talk about our friends at Nissan. Our partners at Nissan have worked with us to create a new segment across the Locked On College Network titled Thrilling Moments, where we highlight the most exciting play or performances from this weekend's Northwestern football game. This week's thrilling moment from the Northwestern game was Evan Hull's 30 rushes for 122 yards and a touchdown. He was an absolute workhorse against a top 10 defense against Ohio State. He showed tremendous power and toughness all game long. It really was an impressive job by him. And as we know, as he goes, the entire offense goes. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. And also, thank you for making Locked On Northwestern your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so now that we are back, let us talk about the key players in this game for Northwestern. And we start with the headliner, really, the player of the game, if you were going to pick one, and that is Robbie Barron, the forward. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 4 of 8 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3, and 10 for 11 from the free throw line. Got to the line a bunch in this one and made them count. And the plus minus, he was plus 29 in his 32 minutes of play. He wasn't the only one that had an impact, though. You had your other seniors on there. Boo Booey, 16 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 4 for 9 on field goals, 1 for 1 from 3, actually. 7 of 8 on his free throws. He was plus 33 on his plus minus in his 31 minutes on the court. And then finally, of the seniors, Chase Audige, who had his 13 points on 2 of 7 shooting. Not maybe as efficient as you like, but he was 2 of 4 from 3 and 7 of 7 at the line. He had 4 boards, 9 assists. He led the team in that category. Did have 3 turnovers. Boo Booey also had 6, so that's 9 of those 14 turnovers you saw. But Chase Audige did have a pair of steals as well. He was plus 34, so your 2 veteran star guards come in with plus 33 and plus 34 stat lines. Then you go to Ty Berry, 14 points, 5 of 14 shooting, not very efficient, but was 4 of 10 from 3. You'll take that all day. 0 for 1 at the line, 7 boards, another guy who's very active on the glass, and assist of 2 blocks, 1 steal in his 32 minutes out there. His plus minus was actually plus 17, so not quite as high as some of the other ones on this list. But you have to credit Matt Nicholson playing just 14 minutes, making his impact with 9 points, 4 of 5 from the field. Very efficient, 1 of 2 at the line, 4 boards, 1 block, 1 steal. And I mean, 14 minutes in the game and was a plus 11 on his plus minus. And that's kind of the guys when you look at it that had the biggest impact. And Chris Collins mentioned all 3 by name in his post-game press conference. I mean, look, he said that Robbie Barron and Chase Audige really kind of jumpstart their defense. And he called Robbie Barron a captain on his defense. And that's why they're able to hold a talented Chicago State team, which, by the way, Chris Collins did mention that Chicago State team has a couple of transfers that are former top 100 players. So there is talent on that team. But Robbie Barron and Chase Audige headed up the defense for Northwestern and helped control that Chicago State offense and limit them to just 54 points. He also shouted out Luke Hunger, who played a few minutes in there, just 5 minutes. I would expect his role to probably grow as he continues to get time. He had 2 points, 1 of 3 from the field, a couple offensive boards, and that is the extent of his stat line. But he also gave some credit to Nick Martinelli, getting in there a little bit, the young guys getting involved. But I do think that it's key to see the vets out there making an impact. Titus Verhoeven did not quite have the game that he had in the exhibition, but he's out there, he's mobile. But Matt Nicholson brings that physicality down low, can bang bodies with people, which you're going to have to do at some point this year in the Big Ten. And I think that's going to be who Chris Collins really relies on as this season progresses. Look, he just thinks that his guys need to focus on what they do well and rebound, and they will have success. Look, it's been impressive so far how this team has been able to play. They were without Julian Roper in this one due to, I think it was described as a non-COVID illness, but so they are hoping to be back at full strength on Friday. Matt Nicholson and Robbie Barron were the two players interviewed after the game. Matt talked about, look, his defense is a priority and his points will come, and that shows in his stat line. I mean, playing just 14 minutes and going 4 or 5 from the field. I mean, he emphasized the importance of hustling and making sure he gets up and down the court and beats his guy up and down the court. And he said, look, he's not going to force anything, and he's just going to kind of go out there and do what he does well. And then Robbie Barron credited the way that they shot from the outside to the great looks that they were getting. He said that the team really is just passing up the good looks for great looks, and as long as they continue to do that, you can continue to see shooting from the outside. Maybe not exactly on par with this, because 10 of 21 is extremely high, but maybe something similar as these games progress. But that's kind of what stuck out to me listening to the guys talk about it, and who stuck out, who Chris Collins mentioned played an impact. And in just a second here, we're going to take a look for. But first, let's talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so now that we've talked kind of how through this game and how it looked for Northwestern, let's take a look at what this means going forward. I think you have to feel good about this performance with the way that they started, the way that they shot from deep, the level of defense that they showed. If they can keep that up, those two things, they will be extremely difficult to beat, because, I mean, if you're filling it up from three, you can beat just about anybody. If you're playing great defense with it, you become really hard to beat. Can Robbie Barron keep it up after a phenomenal performance last night? It was a really impressive game. Can he keep this going Friday? Can he keep it going the rest of the season? They did a really good job winning the battle for the boards, especially once they remembered that they have to box out on the defensive side to make sure that their opponents do not get those offensive boards. Next up, Northwestern has Northern Illinois on Friday at 7 p.m. on BTN Plus. Northern Illinois, it's one of those teams that lost a game that they should not have in the opener, which is exactly why we stressed the importance of starting fast. Northern Illinois lost 83-77 to Illinois Springfield. They shot very poorly. They were 40.6% from the field, 28 of 69. They were 10 of 35 from three for 28.6% in that game, and got out-rebounded by 13. They really trailed the game for about the last 18 minutes or so. Was not a great performance by them, but Northwestern welcomes them to town on Friday. And then next week, Northwestern's got a road trip to Georgetown, which will be a fun one to keep an eye on. That's probably going to do it for today's episode. We appreciate you listening to Locked On Northwestern and making Locked On Northwestern your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day, available on the Odyssey app and wherever you get your podcasts. And yeah, just wherever you're listening, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, just search Locked On Northwestern. Make sure you are subscribed. You turn on the notifications. You don't want to miss an episode. But yeah, we're gonna continue to kind of look forward this week and look at this game this weekend with Minnesota. Maybe talk a little bit more about Northern Illinois in this game on Friday as well. But that's going to do it for today's episode. I'm your host, Carter Bird. You can follow me on social media at CarterBird13. And I will see you all next time.